On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla and EV podcast, the more affordable Tesla that I've been calling the Model 2.5 is reportedly delayed. Plus, one Indiana police department has 5 years of fleet data that shows that using Teslas as police cars saves taxpayers a ton of money. Also, the largest free EV charging park in the world is at Giga Berlin, and more. What's happening, friends? I'm Ryan McCaffrey, joining you for episode 507 of Ride the Lightning, your weekly Tesla and EV podcast. Daisy the Boxer to my left, and I want to start this week by saying thank you to the many of you that kindly voted in this week's totally free Patreon poll. A reminder, the Patreon poll is open to everyone. You don't have to be supporting the podcast on Patreon. I just want you to stop by and cast your vote each week, and many of you did so this week, which, as I promised last week, the topic was getting your thoughts on the new Cybertruck long-range rear-wheel drive variant. I, of course, gave you my thoughts last week, and the results were interesting. Of the 5 poll choices, one of them was no opinion / just show me the results, but the most selected option in the poll was 37% of you said the trade-off of range for features isn't worth it to me. Another 32%, so fairly close, voted for it's still too expensive. 11% said I would have rather had the $62,000 250-mile range rear-wheel drive Cybertruck with all the same features as the other two. And then 6% of you said it's appealing to me, I love the extra range, and don't mind the missing features. So we're going to hear a little bit more about this from all of you in the Ride the Lightning hotline with a call about this later on in the podcast. But first, there is, as usual, a whole lot of Tesla and EV news to talk about. And that's just this week, because next week, a friendly reminder, will be my quarterly earnings call recap, highlights, and analysis episode. Should be a fun one, because the quarterly earnings calls pretty much always are. There's always new and interesting information and insights and analysis that comes out of that. So do stay tuned for episode 508 next week. But for now, to get warmed up, I wanted to tell you about the Q1 results of the community-voted supercharger site poll that Tesla, the fan vote, the community vote that Tesla puts up every single quarter. The winners have been announced. I wanted to give you the list real quick and just say congratulations to the following locations that will soon get a new, presumably V4, supercharger site in their town or city. We have Bournemouth in the UK, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Nichols in Australia, and then in the US, a bunch of sites: Fredericksburg, Texas, Clarksville, Tennessee, Roswell, New Mexico, which of course I told you about that special site last week, Lake Havasu City in Arizona, which, if you're looking to drive one particular route from Vegas to Phoenix or vice versa, which I've done a number of times in my life, Lake Havasu City is one way you could go, so that's good to have a supercharger coming there. Long Beach, California, getting one or perhaps another one, because I'd have a hard time believing that there isn't already one in Long Beach, and I didn't think to check. Anyway, Long Beach, McAllister, Oklahoma, Big Creek in Georgia, Lake Wales in Florida, Decatur in Illinois, and the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, Nevada, getting a site as a result of this quarterly vote as well. So all of you hopefully will be getting those sites in the next, 3 months or so, sometime in the next quarter. And then there were some sites around the world in the Czech Republic, Malaysia, Poland, Italy, and Lithuania. And if you'd like to go vote for your town or a place that you think there should be a supercharger, voting is now open for Q2. You can head to tesla.com/supercharger-voting/overview. and that will take you to the right spot. Next up this week, here's a fun story. This wasn't actually going to be my headline story until we get to the actual headline story that dropped on a Friday this week, but this is a good one. Remember the Bargersville, Indiana Police Department? I've mentioned them 2 or 3 times over the years on the podcast because they were notable as what I believe was the first U.S. police department to put a Tesla into its fleet. Well, we've got an update on that fleet, which has now grown by quite a bit, 5 years later. Tip of the cap here to Tesla tipster Sawyer Merritt. That's where I saw this, and he linked to the original story, which was from the Indiana Star newspaper's website. And the Star writes, they first start by quoting Bargersville Police Chief Todd Bertram, who says, "I couldn't even begin to say how much," referring to money that the department has saved over those 5 years. The quote continues from Chief Bertram. He says, "Since 2020, I'd say we've been saving about $70,000 to $80,000 a year from having our vehicles, and the more cars we get, the more savings too," end quote. The department, which has 16 officers, started with 1 car in 2019 and has since added another dozen. Bertram remembers getting a monthly gas bill in June of 2024 that was more than $3,100 for 4 gas cars. That same month, he said, it cost $300 to charge all 13 EVs. Quote, "That's a lot of taxpayer money," Bertram said. "The original Tesla we first got in 2019, we sold for $21,000. We tend to do that when it hits closer to 100,000 miles or if it gets closer to the warranty. That's based on the decisions made by the city council," end quote. The police chief also said they've never had to replace any brakes on the Teslas. That repair on gas cars can run between $1,200 and $1,500. He said the department hasn't experienced any issues or concerns with the electric cars, except one that needed a battery pack changed. Quote, "But keep in mind, time down means another car is getting work twice as hard," Bertram said. That Tesla's turnaround time was only 3 days, and it was covered under warranty, which means we didn't have to pay. Compare that to a gas vehicle that had to stay in the shop for a week, end quote. So good stuff from the Indiana Star and good stuff from the Bargersville Police Department. And we're not quite done. The Indiana Star did a video out of this, which has some separate quotes from everything I just gave you. So here is the audio of that video. It's an Indy Star reporter going on a ride-along with Chief Bertram. Take a listen to that.
This is my first time in a Tesla, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I got a guy for speeding on 37, and all he wanted to talk about was the Tesla. And during that same traffic stop, somebody honks, and a guy's hanging out his window with his phone, videoing the Tesla. It's insane. That's the kind of stuff that I didn't anticipate. I didn't expect the craziness about it. I mean, I thought it was a good idea, and I was trying to save some money and trying to figure out how we're going to, not raise the tax rate and still add guys. And yeah, it's really, that was the craziness that I didn't anticipate at all.
And that's because Bargersville's growing like crazy.
Oh yeah, we went from 10 years ago we were 4 square miles. Now we're 18 square miles. Now we're, I don't know what the last census was, but it was about 3,000 people in Bargersville. Now there's, I guarantee you this new census is going to be 10. The quickness of this car is really useful in law enforcement, because when you're in a Dodge Charger and you're stomping it, everybody's looking because it's screaming. It has to do the downshift. It has to, this doesn't. I mean, it just kind of, you can just get right in it and it makes no noise and it's gone.
How quiet it is pretty amazing.
It is really amazing, yeah. It's kind of funny. Early in the morning when you're patrolling the streets and you're in the neighborhoods like we just were, the squirrels don't even get out of the way. I mean, they just sit there in the road. You're like, go, get out of the way. But yeah, it's really an amazing car, and it's really done exactly as I predicted it would do. On the winter driving, cold weather driving, I suspected that we would lose about 50 miles. I was off a little bit. We were losing about 80, somewhere around there, just heating the car.
Whose idea was it to reach out to Tesla and make this happen?
It was mine. The goal was to have a few Teslas that would reduce the amount of use in the budget so we could put that back in and pay for their salaries.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll work?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Jeez, I mean,
if I had all Teslas, I could pay to hire 2 officers full time, and then we were spending on the Dodge Chargers and on the rest of our Dodge Chargers we're spending $7,000 a year in fuel per car.
I mean, really, everything you just heard from the police chief, that's about the most glowing recommendation you could possibly have to make the argument of a Tesla as a police vehicle. I wonder if any of Bargersville's newer cars happen to be upfit vehicles from Unplugged Performance, because if they're not, then Chief Bertram, you should give him a call, because they might be able to do it better and or cheaper than whoever's been doing them for you so far. But anyway, this is what it's all about, right? I mean, police departments are saving taxpayer money. You're keeping the officers safe in an incredibly safe vehicle. You're not spitting tons of carbon dioxide into the air, since a lot of police cars' time is just spent idling. It's just a win all around. And Bargersville is on the Gen 1 Model 3s and Model Ys. That's the interesting part. The Highlands and the Junipers are going to be even more efficient and probably more reliable if and when they choose to add those to the fleet as well. So kudos to Chief Bertram. About 6 years ago, he took a chance on it, figuring that the economics would win out, but he couldn't know for sure with regard to police use of the vehicles until he actually got them out in the field, right? He did, and they aced every test. You just love to see it, and I hope every other police department in America hears about this and follows suit. All right, before I get to this week's main story, I wanted to say that I hope all of you who are kindly supporting the podcast on Patreon at that $10 per month tier or higher, which grants you access not only to early access to each week's episode and an ad-free version of each week's episode, but that $10 tier also unlocks the weekly lightning round mini episodes. There are now 139 of them, and this week's was topical. I did this last quarter, and I thought I'd do it again. The topic was the 5 questions that I would ask on this coming week's earnings call. You know, they have the most upvoted retail shareholder questions. Well, this little thought exercise was, if they just gave me the mic and said, Ryan, you ask the questions on behalf of the Tesla community, the retail shareholders, these are the 5 that I would ask. So if you'd like to hear that, you can join my Patreon, support the podcast at patreon.com/Tesla podcast. You can hear that and the other 138 lightning round mini episodes. The overwhelming majority of those are evergreen, meaning they're not topical. You could just dive into them right now, and they're going to have the same relevance and hopefully enjoyment level as you would get if you had listened to it the day it dropped. So thank you to everybody who has kindly been supporting the podcast. And if you wanted to consider backing the podcast, this is a listener-supported podcast. I would be humbled and grateful if you would consider that. Again, the Patreon website is patreon.com/Tesla podcast. Okay, the headline story this week comes courtesy of Reuters, who I am inclined to trust the reporting of here, given that they have previously broken a number of Tesla stories, including the existence of the Highland Model 3 and later the Juniper Model Y. Well, they've got a new scoop this week, and it's not a fun one. They claim Tesla will delay the US launch of the more affordable EV, the one that I have been shorthandedly referring to as the Model 2.5. Reuters writes, Tesla's long-awaited plans for an affordable car include a US-made, stripped-down version of its best-selling electric SUV, the Model Y, but the production launch has been delayed, 3 sources with knowledge of the matter told Reuters. Tesla has promised affordable vehicles beginning in the first half of the year, providing a potential boost to flagging sales. Global production of the lower-cost Model Y, internally codenamed E41, is expected to begin in the United States, the sources said. That would occur at least a few months later than outlined in Tesla's public plan, they added, offering a range of revised targets from the third quarter to early next year. The reason for the delay was not clear. 2 of the people said Tesla aimed to produce 250,000 of the cheaper Model Ys in the US next year, 2026. Reuters reported last month that the China launch of the E41 will occur in 2026. The E41 will be smaller and cost 20% less to produce than the refreshed Model Y, the sources familiar with China plans told Reuters. The timing of the rollout in Europe is not clear. Tesla is also planning to launch a bare-bones version of its Model 3 sedan, 3 people said. Well, that's certainly not great news, and again, I am inclined to believe it given Reuters' track record on reporting on Tesla, plus the fact that, journalistically speaking, they did have 3 sources on this, not just 1. So it's not great news whether you're a prospective buyer who's been waiting on a more affordable Tesla and or a Tesla shareholder. It's not good news either way. For starters, that means that this year's production and delivery numbers are probably going to be hard-pressed to meet, let alone exceed, last year's. Now, yes, the Cybertruck is in production for the full calendar year, meaning general production, not Foundation Series production. Cybertruck's in full general production for the entire year this year, and Tesla will have the long-range rear-wheel drive versions, the cheaper version of the Cybertruck, to sell basically in the second half, since deliveries are scheduled to start in June on that variant. But I would genuinely ask, is that going to be enough to offset the pause in Model Y's production for much of Q1 that we saw while the factories all switched over to the new Model Y? I mean, SNX have been trending, unfortunately, in the wrong direction as well, which I'll talk a little bit more about later in this podcast. And I mean, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised by this, given that it's mid-April already, and Tesla had been continuously guiding for a start of production in June. They really probably would have had to have unveiled it by now. Also, when I talked about the last Reuters scoop about that smaller, cheaper, the E41 Model Y in China not too long ago, I had speculated if, in fact, the Model 2.5s, as I've been referring to them, might in fact just be smaller, cheaper 3s and Ys, and this report that I just got done reading you does in fact mention, quote, a bare bones variant of its Model 3 compact sedan. Although, Reuters, your reporting's good, but Model 3 is not a compact. It's a midsize. The mini version, this smaller version, will probably be considered a compact, but the car now is a midsize. Anyway, so this latest report does seem to suggest that that is exactly what's going to happen, that they're not in fact going to be totally new models at all, but they're going to just be a 3 and a Y that happen to be smaller and a bit more stripped down. I mean, it does make sense because the 3 and the Y are both huge established names at this point. I mean, I suppose that there is maybe a bit of a shiny new toy excitement that gets lost if they're not badged as completely new models with new names. But Tesla probably thinks that the household nameness, which I recognize not a real term, I'm just making that up, but you get what I'm saying. But the household name factor of 3 and Y probably more than make up for the lack of a shiny new toy factor. And also, given that the Y has been the world's best-selling new car for 2 years running, it's hard to argue with Tesla's logic on that, if in fact that's the decision as it appears to be. Now, continuing this train of thought for just a moment. If Tesla is not going to be doing completely new models like a Model Q or whatever, if they're just going to be Model 3 and Model Y, but smaller and cheaper, then, the thought occurs to me that maybe Tesla won't do a big reveal event for either one of them, and instead, they'll just treat it like the refreshes of the SNX, and then the 3, and then the Y, meaning they just post them on their website one day with, in this case, a huge emphasis on something like, now starts at $30,000, or whatever the actual starting price is going to be, maybe 35, maybe 35 on the 3, maybe 38 on the Mini Y. I don't know. We'll talk more about that later once it gets closer and we start to learn a little bit more about them. But as to when, speaking of getting closer, as to when this Mini 3 and Mini Y might launch, by the way, I would do my classic In-N-Out lunch burger bet that both of the cheaper cars are going to have a turn signal stalk. That now, because the current Model 3 doesn't, and when I asked Lars about it in my interview with him on episode 499, he more or less seemed to suggest that we shouldn't expect it to come back on the 3, but they brought it back on the new Y. And for these more affordable cars that are going to be just trying to get anybody and everybody to come over and convert to EV, I would be stunned if they used turn signal buttons. I think we can pretty much take a turn signal stalk to the bank with the Mini 3 and the Mini Y. But anyway, as far as when they might launch, now, if Reuters' own sources aren't sure yet, those sources within Tesla, and those sources are kind of speculating between Q3 of this year and sometime early next year, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it probably means it won't be Q3 of this year. Now, when I say that, I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I try to be an optimistic person on this podcast, and in fact, in life in general, because I just find, for me, it's mentally healthier for me to try and be more optimistic than pessimistic. But I'm also trying to be a realist. And so the reason that I say I doubt a Q3 launch, and again, would be thrilled to be proven wrong, but we're already in Q2 right now. So Q3, even the end of it, is less than 6 months out from right now. So if the sources at Tesla, if Reuters' sources at Tesla, if they don't even know yet, now I would presume that Reuters' sources are probably not up at the executive level, which would be the people that would know the target launch windows for the Mini 3 and the Mini Y. But if that information has not made its way downstream yet to some of the other people in the company, I just would lean later on my expectation rather than sooner. And then if I take that thought a step further, I have to ask myself, would launching those cars in Q4 make sense? Now, Q3 would make sense if they can pull it off, because then it would give Tesla time to ramp up production on those mini cars, whether it's going to be one or the other or both launching at the same time. And it would give them time, again, to ramp up production on one or both of those cars ahead of what is the biggest quarter every year for every car company, Q4. But would Tesla want to launch them in Q4, if that's not when they're going to be ready until, when the demand could outstrip the supply, which isn't what Tesla's going to want in such a crucial part of the year? I mean, it might make more sense to just push it to Q1, but I guess then again, if I just police my own thinking here, the new Model 3 did launch in the beginning of Q4 everywhere in the world except here in North America. We got it in Q1. So I guess maybe, what do I know? What do I know? But I'll give you one more thought on this, the Mini 3 and the Mini Y, because I think that's what I'm going to start calling them now. But I do wonder, assuming they're not going to come at the same time, which they might, but which one would come first if it's going to be a staggered launch? Would it be the Mini 3 or the Mini Y? Now, history would suggest the Mini 3 because it's a lower volume vehicle than the Y is, and it would give Tesla a chance to dial everything in on the production side, on the supplier side, before opening the floodgates on production and their suppliers on their highest volume car, the Y, which is exactly what happened with the original 3. Of course, 3 came before Y, and same thing on the Refresh. The Highland came before the Juniper. But as we know with Tesla, past precedent is not always a predictor of future action. And given the pressure that the company's under right now to increase their numbers and get more cars out the door, I think it is entirely possible that, again, if they're not going to both go into production at the same time, that they might start with the Mini Y, because it's just the bigger payoff, the bigger potential, not even potential. It's the car, it's going to make more money than the Mini 3 is going to. So the plot thickens on these crucial vehicles, these Model 2.5s, which again, I think I'll now start calling the Mini 3 and the Mini Y. These crucial vehicles for Tesla. Let's see if we hear anything about either one of them coming up on the earnings call this week, which again, I'll have the recap, highlights, and analysis for you on next week's episode. Next up this week, recent data has shown that Tesla's Model Y and Model 3 remained the top-selling electric vehicles in the US in Q1, despite a decline in overall sales in the market. Saw this one on Teslarati, who wrote, as detailed in the latest Kelley Blue Book EV sales report shared by Cox Automotive, Tesla's Model Y and Model 3 outsold the next several models combined during the first quarter, while the Cybertruck was the 10th best-selling EV overall. Tesla sold over 64,000 Model Y units, representing a 33.8% drop year over year, along with selling 52,000 plus Model 3 units, marking a 70.3% increase year over year to outpace the next several models combined. Now, we know the reason why, which of course is with the Y, that drop in Q1 is no doubt due in large part to that little fact that Tesla literally stopped making the Model Y for much of Q1 and then only barely started delivering the Juniper refreshes at the end of the quarter in March. And then the Model 3 seeing a big year-over-year increase is because the Model 3 went through the same thing in the US last year, where they had stopped production of the old one, started production of the new one. So that's I think we can largely explain those numbers with those production changes that were made. The Cybertruck sold just over 6,400 units, while Model S and X sold 1,280 and 3,843 respectively. So just over 1,280 Model S's and 3,843 Model X's. Now, as far as where SNX rank on the list, because Y is number 1, 3 is number 2, the Model X was number 17 on this EV sales report, and the Model S was number 39. So that's interesting to me. The gap has widened quite a bit in terms of sales between X and S. It used to be a pretty tight 55% to 45% split or so, and it is now about 3-to-1 X to S. I guess clearly the new Model 3 in particular, I mean, the 3 had already eaten the S's lunch starting from when the 3 was first introduced in 2017, and I guess the new 3 is really eating the S's lunch, and the Y, I wonder if we'll see the X sales go down, quarter over quarter, year over year, now that the Juniper Y, the new Y, which is just so much more refined, and that's getting out into the market now. So we shall see. Other interesting notables on this list, if you're curious, since we do talk about other EVs here now. The Rivian R1S came in at number 13. Higher than that, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, number 6. That car continues to do very well. I'll just say, anecdotally, I see Ioniq 5s everywhere, and that's pretty much been the case since they came out. They're very popular, at least in my neck of the woods, and these sales numbers, it's the number 6 selling EV in the US in the quarter, that does seem to suggest that it's not just a California thing, that it's that extends to the entire US EV market. A former coworker of mine, he's got one. He's had one for a couple years now, I think. He loves it, so it seems like it's a good car. And I do appreciate it's got nice, unique styling. And it's definitely got a look, right? It has got a personality to it. Anyway, moving along here, the Hummer EV, for another just interesting, notable EV, is number 21 on the list. I rarely see those around here, so I'm shocked that it's ranked higher on this list than the Model S. And then the Nissan Leaf, I was surprised to see, has fallen all the way down to number 28. On the plus side, I believe I read recently, I think there's a pretty bold redesign of the Leaf that's coming pretty soon. That's good to see. It's probably due for it at this point. And then the Porsche Taycan is down at number 43 with 1,019 units sold in the US in Q1. That is not a lot. Now, price it's got to be a big factor in that, because I've just never heard anything bad about that car. And Porsche as a brand certainly just it's a desirable brand, right? It's not really an affordable brand, but it's a brand that a lot of people aspire to, and I'm just really surprised that the Taycan is down in that neck of the woods. It is still, I will say, it's still the number one non-Tesla EV that I'd most love to drive, realistically, because I guess if you were to just say, go nuts, what would your actual answer be? Just pie in the sky, what would it be? Well, it would be the Rimac Nevera, the $2.5 million quad motor EV hypercar that they've only made 150 of. That would be my real answer, but there's a 99% chance that I will never, probably a 99.9% chance that I will never drive a Rimac Nevera. There's probably a pretty strong chance I'll never even see one, since there's only 150 of them. Anyway, as far as realistic cars that I see out on the road, the Taycan, I really do. It's pretty high on my list of cars that I'd love to drive. I've never driven a Porsche. They have this great reputation as being awesome drivers' cars, and I've never driven any Porsche ever. And well, I would love to drive their EV, the Taycan. Anyway, that is that for the overall sort of EV market for Q1. Now, on a related note, This same data broke down some pretty interesting brand by brand numbers, with Tesla outselling the next top 10 brands combined in the first quarter of 2025 with 128,000 plus units. So if you're curious who's growing year over year and who's shrinking, now again, year over year meaning Q1 last year to Q1 this year. Porsche is up 249%, Toyota up 196%, GMC plus 183%, Subaru and Volvo both plus 173%. I guess Volvo, that must include Polestar. Chevy up 114%, VW up 55%, Genesis, who I didn't even realize they had an EV, that 51% gain there year over year. Jaguar, that's must be Waymo buys, because the only I-Paces I ever see on the road are Waymos. But hey, all right, if somebody's buying them, that's fine. They're EVs. More EVs on the road is good. Jaguar up 49% year over year. Cadillac plus 37%. That's definitely, I do see the Lyric out there. So that car's getting around. BMW up 26%. Nissan plus 22%. Ford just a plus 12%. Hyundai, for the praise I just got done giving the Ioniq 5, and they've got the Ioniq 6, and they've got a lineup. They're only up 5%. Audi plus 3%. And then in fairness now, Tesla, year over year, pretty well due in part to the Model Y changing over from the old one to the new one, but Tesla down 9% year over year. Lexus also down 9%. Mini down 16%. Kia down 24%. That's surprising because I do see the EV9 starting to. That's a relatively new model. At least it's newer. It came out after Q1 last year. Surprised they're down 24%. Rivian down 37%, which I talked about a couple shows ago, and Mercedes-Benz down 58%. Ouch. So first of all, Porsche. Wow. I mean, I know it's not quite as awesome as it looks because, as we just learned from the Taycan numbers, they were starting with a pretty small number. So any fluctuation is going to move the needle quite a lot for them. But still, I say kudos to them for continuing to electrify with their new Macan EV, which it's brand new. But I'm already seeing a good number of those on the roads here. And the Macan EV is almost certainly going to sell a lot more units than the Taycan, if for no other reason. Well, probably the two huge reasons. One, SUVs outsell sedans. Two, the Macan EV is a lot cheaper than the Taycan, by a lot. I don't want to necessarily say half, but it's substantially less money. So the Macan EV should continue to help drive growth in Porsche EV sales. Now, Toyota, similar growth, huge growth year over year, but in my humble opinion, a lot less impressive than the Porsche gains, if for no other reason than, well, again, they started from near zero, and all they really did was basically start selling the BZ4X, which, as you heard me discuss in response to a caller on the Ride the Lightning hotline last week, I'm not personally a fan of that car. And yes, again, Tesla was one of the brands that went down a bit, as was Rivian. But as I've talked about in recent weeks, I am not worried about either of those two. Mercedes, however, that's a red alert for me. I don't pretend to be a Mercedes-Benz expert, but down 58% drop year over year in your EV sales, that's an all hands to battle stations kind of situation, if you ask me, over at that company. 58% in the negative is very, very not good. But overall, there are about 3 times as many companies that are up year over year as down. And that, to me, is a healthy sign for the EV movement. Before I continue with the rest of this week's Tesla and EV news, a quick word about Accelerate Auto and their XCare extended warranty option for your car. Accelerate Auto is redefining the electric car extended warranty. They're not thinking outside the box. They have crushed and disassembled said box. But looking ahead and building for the future, it's not anything radical. It's what innovative organizations do. And that's why these folks who, as I like to mention, are former Tesla employees. I chat with them on a regular basis. They're good guys, good folks over there. They developed XCare, which is a comprehensive extended warranty designed exclusively for EVs. I've got a policy on our 2018 Model 3 Performance for 3 years and an additional 3 years, so it's still covered, and an additional 40,000 miles. They also, by the way, in addition to the warranty itself, re-engineered the entire customer experience because we all know how bad that can be. But theirs is nice and easy. I've used it a few times. You just submit the claim, and they reimburse you quickly. It's very quick and painless. Now, if you want to just cover your high voltage battery and drive unit, your vehicle may qualify for that coverage as well. Best of all, because you're a Ride the Lightning listener, you will get $100 off when you select XCare's one-time payment option. Use the discount code LIGHTNING, and the website to go to, well, it's linked in the description. That's the easiest way. Just click it from there. But it's XCELERATEAUTO.com/XCARE. That's accelerateauto.com/XCare. Continuing on with the next story this week, I told you I'd say more about SNX. Well, here you go. Tesla China has discontinued SNX orders amid the tariff war that's currently going on around the world. Saw this one on Teslarati, who wrote, a look at Tesla China's official website shows that only the re-engineered Model 3 sedan and the new Model Y crossover are available for order. Customers in China are only presented with a button to learn about the Model S, Model X, and the Cybertruck. As noted in a Reuters report, new orders for the two flagship vehicles have also been halted by Tesla China on its WeChat mini program account. Customers in China who wish to purchase a Model S or Model X can still do so today, but they can only acquire inventory vehicles. As per Li Yanwei, an analyst with the China Auto Dealers Association, Tesla China only imported 1,553 Model X and 311 Model S in 2024. Geez, that's 5-1. That is wild. This is the second global market now that the SNX have dropped out of recently, albeit for a different reason. In Japan, which I'd talked about when it happened not too long ago, it was due to Tesla not doing any more right-hand drive vehicles, which of course in turn will drop the demand for them in a right-hand drive country. And so this time around, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It is a macroeconomic factor. Now, the most optimistic view of the reduction in the total number of global markets for SNX would be to say that, well, it must mean that a refresh is coming soon. If they're just kind of letting the current S fade off, that, well, there's going to be a new, better one, SNX, newer, better ones on the way. And certainly on this very podcast, on episode 499 with Lars Moravy, the chief engineer at Tesla, you heard him say that we just need to, quote, give Tesla a minute. Give us a minute, he said, and they'll get around to updating SNX again. So eventually that hypothesis will be true, even if only by accident. Now, I mean, look, I know that these sales are really just a drop in the bucket. We're talking about less than 2,000 cars in a year in this case, because if you want to compare to Giga Shanghai's output of the 3 and the Y in China, they make that many 3 and the Y in about 2 days. If you just combine 3 and Y, that's about maybe 2 days worth of 3 and Y production over there. That's how much of a drop in the bucket these SNX sales in China are. But I'll be honest, it still bums me out because SNX are just such tremendously good cars. I know I've said this 100 times before on the podcast, But in my humble opinion, the Model S Plaid is the best all-around car in the entire world when you factor in everything. Price, performance, range, styling, safety, cargo volume, technology, driver assistance. Throw it all in and just put it all in the stew. And well, the Model S Plaid stew is the one that tastes the best to me. Out of any vehicle on planet Earth, the Plaid S is just incredible. I mean, to get a quicker car, you need to spend a whole lot more than $95,000, like a lot more. To get a safer car than the Model S, all right, well, I guess in that case, all you have to do is buy a Model 3 or a Model Y. But, I mean, you get what I'm saying, though. Like, the Plaid S is just such a insane... I mean, the regular S, too, but S and X are just so great. And so, I guess I'll leave it at this. I just can't wait to see what Tesla decides to do with these cars when Lars and his team do get around to refreshing them again. I mean, I would say 48-volt architecture, steer-by-wire, those seem like they're a given, which in that case would make the yoke suddenly a whole lot more appealing on SNX. You could probably bank on improved interior quality, not that it's a slouch now, but probably even better interior quality, more luxury features, probably even better NVH, noise, vibration, harshness. I mean, when I interviewed Franz for episode 500, he seemed to suggest that there could be even more performance possible, which seems nuts, but sure, I'll take it. I mean, the obvious way to get more performance out of the Model S Plaid would be to drop a fourth motor in it, which is certainly, again, bet you In-N-Out lunch every day for a week, that's what's going to happen with the new Roadster. The new Roadster is 1,000% gonna be a quad motor car. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. So Tesla could do that on the S and X too if they felt like it. So we'll see, but I'm really curious to see what happens with S and X. But in the meantime, I am sad to see these global markets discontinuing S and X. But in happier news, let's keep going around the Tesla world and make our way to Germany, where Giga Berlin boasts the world's largest free EV charging park. Another tip of the cap to Teslarati, who writes, visitors to Tesla's Gigafactory in Grünheide can't miss the sprawling network of, let me make sure I clear my throat for this one, 546 charging stations peppering the parking areas, dwarfing other global contenders. The U.S. automakers set up snatched the title of the world's largest charging park from a fellow site in Germany, a 259 station lot in Märklingen, per the German Automobile Association. Located off of the A10 near Berlin, Tesla's charging hub isn't just for show. Teslarati says Giga Berlin's EV charging areas feature 527 chargers in the south, 19 in the north, and 226 covered charging stations. The stations pack 11 kilowatt chargers, delivering up to 71 kilometers of range per hour. Tesla's covered EV chargers tap into hundreds of solar panels mounted onto the parking lot roofs. And Tesla shared that with the solar panels, the covered EV chargers have a maximum power capacity of 1 megawatt. Most of the Tesla Giga Berlin stations are free for employees, visitors, and passers-by. The only Tesla chargers subject to monetary charges are the superchargers. A Tesla spokesperson noted, quote, there is also a public supercharger station which is subject to regular rates. The 19 V4 superchargers open to all EV brands cost non-Tesla drivers 53 cents per kilowatt hour. Wow. 500 plus chargers. That is super cool. Even if they're not all high-speed chargers, They're the equivalent of basically their destination chargers, like the wall chargers that you'd put in your garage. But that's more than enough during a work day to get you juiced up. So that is super cool. I love that. Over 500. I mean, that's still, it's just a neat moment for the EV movement, if you ask me. And also on top of that, Tesla making them mostly free, like 90% free, that's just the cherry on top. I mean, as I've often said, in my humble opinion, Tesla's a company that does the right thing most of the time. And I think this is a great example of that. This is a great benefit for not only their Giga Berlin employees, but also the Grünheide Berlin community at large. So kudos, Tesla. This is fantastic. All right, before I finish up with the news this week, I've got a couple of stories in the other EV news segment. I'll start with this one. Lucid confirms a 2026 launch for its $50,000 mid-size electric SUV. Saw this one on Drive Tesla Canada, who writes, Lucid says it remains on track to launch its highly anticipated mid-size electric SUV in 2026, as it looks to take on a segment of the market currently dominated by the Tesla Model Y. Quote, there are a lot of crazy things going on in the world that can affect that timeline, but currently we are on track, said Derek Jenkins, Lucid's Senior Vice President of Design and Brand, via Reuters. Jenkins noted that Lucid's teams are actively preparing assembly lines and working closely with suppliers to meet its production targets. The upcoming midsize SUV, expected to start around $50,000, represents a significant expansion into a more affordable segment of the EV market. Lucid currently produces its luxury Air sedan and the Gravity SUV. The new crossover will also be priced to compete with models like the Ford Mustang Mach-E, Hyundai Ioniq 5, and Rivian's forthcoming R2, vehicles that offer a mix of performance and practicality at a lower cost than Lucid's current lineup. Well, I say yes. This is great news. I mean, this is great to see. I was just talking about Lucid here recently. Was it last week? I don't know. I can't keep track of time anymore. But I was talking about how they seemingly just can't go on surviving solely at the high end of the market. And clearly Lucid agrees, and they have a plan to move down market. Now, I know some of you might say, well, it'll be too little too late, because the Mustang Mach-E, the Ioniq 5, and most especially the Tesla Model Y are pretty entrenched in that $50,000-ish mid-size crossover SUV market. Not to mention the million other gas-powered mid-size crossover SUVs. And if you said that, well, I wouldn't argue with you there, but what Lucid has shown is some serious engineering prowess with the Air, and that's the early word on the Gravity as well, like I was talking about just a week or two ago. So if Lucid can bring something that is as good or better than those other cars that I just mentioned in that mid-size electric SUV segment, I recognize it's certainly a heck of a lot easier said than done, especially with them trying to come down so far in price from the cars that they're making now. But if they can do it, then I feel a lot better about Lucid's chances for long-term survival. And again, I'm rooting for them. They got a factory in Arizona. They got a great car. It's EVs that can displace, get some gas cars off the road. More good EVs is always a good thing. And the last story that I want to tell you this week is a Rivian piece, and it's this. Rivian lands its first major fleet deal outside of Amazon, and it's with HelloFresh. One more tip of the cap to Drive Tesla Canada, who writes, Rivian has officially delivered 70 of its all-electric commercial vans to HelloFresh, marking its first major fleet customer since the automaker opened commercial sales beyond Amazon earlier this year. HelloFresh, the global meal kit provider known for brands like Factor and Green Chef, has already integrated the Rivian vans into 14 major markets in the US. Since the rollout began several months ago, the vans have driven over 250,000 miles and helped the company avoid using approximately 20,000 gallons of gasoline and a reduction of over 200 metric tons of carbon emissions. Ben Kubik, the senior program manager of last mile logistics at HelloFresh, noted that the range of the Rivian vans has opened up delivery routes that weren't previously possible with other EVs. Quote, "The Rivian commercial van is also purposefully built for last mile delivery, so we can avoid things like turning the vehicle on and off 100 plus times a day, manually sliding the door of a cargo van the same amount, or getting stuck in traffic idling and wasting gasoline," he said. HelloFresh has also been building out infrastructure to support their new EV fleet, installing more than 100 charging stations across its network in preparation for the deployment. Partnering with Ryder's EV-focused Ryder Electric Plus platform, the company is also securing long-term support for vehicle maintenance and fleet scaling. All right, so more good news. We're ending on more good news here. And I would have to imagine that if Rivian prices these RCVs, these commercial vans, right, I mean, no doubt, I don't have any doubt that the total cost of ownership skews heavily in their favor compared to a gas-powered commercial van, but they do still need to make that upfront price palatable for those potential fleet buyers. But if they can do that, then word of mouth is going to start to get around. I mean, I will say, another reason that this makes me happy to see this story in particular, my wife really likes Factor, because what happened was, quick little story that's apropos of nothing. My day job, Xbox podcast, landed Factor as a sponsor. And so they sent us a week's worth of meals to try out. And my wife, who is in meetings all day, ended up stealing them all, because you just throw them in the microwave for 2 minutes and then that's it. You eat them and you're good to go. So it's super quick. And she stole them all. She really liked them, like to the point that she subscribed. So, hey, Factor, if you're out there, give me a call over here on Ride the Lightning as well. We would definitely consider a sponsorship based on the happy customer over here in my house. But anyway, back on topic. If the Rivian commercial van can slowly disrupt that commercial van space, and then next year, the Tesla Semi can slowly start to disrupt the semi-truck space once that high-volume Tesla Semi factory gets ramped up in 2026, then between those two parts of the market, we really will start to see some meaningful gains in those market segments that have the potential to eliminate a whole lot of pollution from the air that we all breathe. All right, that is everything I've got for you in another busy week of Tesla and EV news. Stick with me, though. I've got a few of your excellent Ride the Lightning hotline calls teed up and ready to go. Those are coming up next.
Hi, this is Franz von Holzhausen, and you're listening to Ride the Lightning with Ryan McCaffrey, the Tesla unofficial podcast.
Welcome to the Ride the Lightning hotline. This is your chance to call in and potentially be featured here on the podcast. So if you've got a Tesla or EV question, comment, or discussion topic, there are two easy ways to call in. Either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software. Just record your question. Please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many callers each week as possible. And then email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can just call in with that same 90-second or less question and leave a message on the Ride the Lightning hotline. It's a toll-free number you can dial anytime. The number is 1-888-989-8752. That number again, 1-888-989-TSLA. And if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com to learn more. First up this week is Dave from Florida, who just took delivery of a new Model Y.
Hey Ryan, it's Dave from New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Just picked up my Model Y Launch Edition today. It was such a fantastic car. I'll tell you, the delivery experience was fantastic too. I got there about 11 o'clock when my appointment was scheduled, and it turns out there were 20 other people scheduled for 11 o'clock as well. We all sat there in the waiting room as the countdown to 0 happened, and then we were ushered into a dark warehouse room with all kinds of lights going on, and smoke machine, and the hedgehog waving at us. And we get in there, and you can find your car pretty easy. And then a light show started with all the cars in the warehouse at the same time. Fantastic, a completely different light show than I've ever seen before. Loved it. That was it. So then they put the lights on and say, find your car. There's a clipboard inside. Sign a couple papers, and you can head on out. So it was the same time I was turning in my old car for a lease. The whole thing took me about, half an hour. And I was on my way with the new car, and it is absolutely fantastic. I love every minute of it. It is smooth. It is quiet. The sea coolers came on. It just blew me away. So I'm just really loving the new car. Anyway, thanks for all you do. Take care.
Dave, I appreciate the call because I always love it when people's enthusiasm just radiates through the phone, through your recording. So I want to tell you congratulations on that new Model Y. It's just such a fantastic upgrade, just as the new Model 3 is a great improvement over the old one. In fact, Edmunds just did an EV SUV roundup this past week, and they said about the new Y, quote, "It is perhaps the best riding SUV in this entire class and one of the quietest, most comfortable electric vehicles you can buy today," end quote. That is pretty high praise. If you're a customer looking around the market and cross-shopping and you see that, that's a pretty compelling quote in favor of the new Y, especially like in context of the fact that arguably the biggest complaint about the old Model Y was the ride quality. So for Edmunds, who's just an independent source here, independent tester, consumer, whatever you want to call him, to come in and say it's perhaps the best riding SUV in the entire class, that is really, really impressive. So again, congrats, Dave. I think people are going to have a hard time not buying the new Y if they take it out for a test drive. It's going to be hard to resist. So drive it in good health, Dave, and congratulations again. Next up this week is regular caller, friend of the podcast, Bill from Wisconsin, a Cybertruck owner himself, calling in regards to the range extender and the maybe, hopefully not cancellation of said range extender. Bill, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, Bill from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Say, I have some speculation in regards to the what appears to be canceled range extender for Cybertruck. So when they did the unveil back in 2019, obviously range extender was not part of the plan. They thought with the 4680s, they were going to be able to get an energy density that was high enough that they could give us a longer range within the truck body itself and not have to include this range extender that ate up a third of our bed, which I think all of us would prefer. What if the reason why they've taken it off the design studio is because 4680 manufacturing has finally gotten to the point where they've achieved that goal, and maybe you're going to be able to get extended range in the body of the truck and not need a range extender. Now, we bought ours in December, and so we're basically stuck with what we got. But, with a dual motor, you can do 343, I think is what the stated range is, with the stock tires. And I decided that was enough for us. We don't tow or anything, so we don't need that extra range. I think that for most people who want the extended range, it's because they're towing and they lose so much of their range that that's the only way to make it a viable towing option. So anyhow, purely speculation, but I think that would be a silver lining at the very least if that's how this turns out. And I would even go so far as to say it would be far superior to having the range extender. Now, what I hope is if that is what they do, that people like us who already took delivery of our trucks, that we would have an upgrade option at that point, that we could potentially do something. But time will tell. This could all just be pure hogwash. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Howdy, Bill. Well, it's fair speculation for sure. Now, that sadly wouldn't help you and your fellow Cybertruck owners, especially those who put down that non-refundable deposit on the range extender. The best answer here would be for both things to happen. The range extender to get done and the longer range, meaning 450 plus mile range Cybertruck to get made. Tesla has done small runs of big batteries before, though. I do want to point that out. They are no stranger to making a big battery pack in a very low volume. The original Roadster, of which there were about 2,400 something made, had, although I guess still has, in fact, an R80 upgrade. That stands for Roadster 80 kilowatt hours. If you ever see an original Tesla Roadster and it's got an R80 badge on it, that's an indication that that car has had the 80 kilowatt hour battery upgrade. It is a $30,000 upgrade that a number of Roadster owners have taken advantage of. And as far as I know, it's still available. It's still on the table for other Roadster owners out there. And the reason I know that is because one of them, I hope he doesn't mind me shouting him out here, longtime Ride the Lightning listener and generous Patreon backer Jackson Wallace, had it done in his Roadster very recently. So there is precedent here for the range extender to go forward, which I know that precedent certainly doesn't guarantee anything. I was just saying something to that same effect about past precedent earlier in the podcast, but I really am just hoping that the reservation holders for this battery upgrade are not left high and dry. I want them to get what they put their non-refundable deposit down on, but failing that, I do hope they get their deposit back. So, Bill, always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much for your call. Next up, on the same subject of the Cybertruck, and in fact, responding to the long-range rear-wheel drive Cybertruck, is Chuck from Oakville, Canada.
Hey, Ryan. It's Chuck from Oakville, Canada. I'm just driving to work listening to episode 506 about the Cybertruck. What occurs to me is the new Cybertruck is not a Cybertruck for normal people. It is purely a construction truck, a commercial truck. Everything stripped out is stuff that would be nice for normal people to use. But if I'm running a company and I'm giving 5 trucks to workers, I don't want to pay for any of that. The one thing that stands out is they took out the power outlets. Those were so handy for real commercial use. But that's what I think they've built here, is a pure commercial truck. And they expect normal consumers, people like me that want the Cybertruck as an urban assault vehicle, to still buy the dual motor. Thanks. Love the show. Keep it up. You're doing a great job. And give a scratch to Daisy and Mina. Bye now.
Hey, Chuck. Well, you might be right. I mean, in fact, something I forgot to mention on last week's podcast was that if you go into the Cybertruck Design Studio on the Tesla website and you click Compare Models, it's right near the top of the page there. It describes the long-range rear-wheel drive as endurance hauler versus the dual motor, which it dubs maximum lifestyle adventure, and then the descriptor for Cyber Beast, which they call unreal performance. No lies detected there. Although you said it yourself, the lack of the power outlets in the bed, that's a tough pill to swallow for at all, but especially if this version is supposed to be a work truck. So we'll see how it sells over the course of Q3. And again, I say Q3 and not here in Q2 because I did fail. I realized I failed in my duty as your host last week when I forgot to mention that the long-range rear-wheel drive Cybertrucks don't start delivering until June. I absolutely should have passed that important bit of information along last week, and I did not do so. For that, I apologize. So you can order one right now, but those first deliveries are still at least 6 weeks out. But anyway, we will see what the Tesla executives have to say about it on that earnings call on next week's podcast, because it will almost certainly get brought up, either by them and or the institutional investors. We'll see. Thank you, by the way, to Hubert from Austria, who had called in on this same topic with a fairly similar thought to Chuck as well. So wanted to acknowledge that. The final call I've got time for this week comes from Michael in Sweden, responding to Craig from Indiana about Toyota and their battery tech. So here's Michael on that.
Hello, Ryan. This is Michael calling from Sweden. I'm calling with a reply to Craig from Indiana. He spoke about Toyota and their failed promises when it comes to EVs and battery tech. In Europe, we get Chinese brands, and I suggest following them instead. The brand Geely, with especially their brand Seeker, they have cars that charge up to 460 kilowatts of power. And recently, BYD released a car that can charge up to 1,000 kilowatts of power. And it uses two CCS chargers because the CCS protocol doesn't allow that kind of power from one outlet. The thing with these cars is also that they charge at very high power, higher up in the battery pack. It's the same with Porsche. They can charge at around 300 kilowatts up and over 50% of state of charge. And my Tesla, it just charges at 100 kilowatts of power at 50%. So I find that very interesting, and the new 800 volt systems that the Chinese are using and their batteries are very impressive. Anyway, thank you very much for a great podcast. Cheers. Bye.
Michael, thanks for calling in. You are absolutely right that the Chinese EV companies are in many ways getting these battery and charging advancements done where Toyota most definitely is not, at least not as of yet. Unfortunately, as you know, Craig from Indiana, along with any of us here in the US, won't be seeing or having any access to any Chinese EVs anytime soon, but you guys do. So I'm glad you brought it up because it's a good reminder. And you make a great point that I really wasn't even considering, that Toyota faces perhaps as much of an existential threat from China as it does from Tesla, and maybe even a bigger threat in terms of Toyota's, in my humble opinion, continued stubbornness with riding out its hybrid drive system and refusing to fully adopt battery electric vehicles. So thanks again, Michael, for your call. Thank you to everybody that kindly took the time to call in. If you want to dial me up, feel free. I gave you the 2 easy call-in methods at the top of this segment, so you can refer back to that. And I will get to more of your Ride the Lightning hotline phone calls soon. But now it is time to talk about the soul of adventure, my car. What's going on with mine? Not much, honestly. I'm just loving it, having a great time driving it. I look forward to every chance I get to take that car out for a ride. It is just such a good all-around car. I really, really love it. On the entertainment front, I wanted to give you an entertainment recommendation for this week. A show on Apple TV Plus called The Studio. It's with Seth Rogen, and a bunch of other really funny people are in it too. So it's great comedy. It's about a guy, like a longtime movie industry guy who gets named the head of a fictional movie studio. And it's kind of just all these independent hijinks about what goes on. I've found it really funny, really good show. So just 30 minutes too, so you're kind of in and out. If you're looking for just a nice, easy, light show, I think that's a good one. So give that a look. Time now for your Tesla Pro Tip of the Week. It comes from Nathan in Tucson.
Hey Ryan, this is Nathan from Tucson. I've been trying to think of a pro tip that I haven't heard before. and I think I might have one for you. So in our navigation system, when we're driving to a destination and we want to add a stop, if we go to add stop, it'll put that destination in between, your final destination. But many times I find that I want to add a stop, but I don't want to add it in between the stop I already had and where I currently am. So if you go to edit trip, you have the choice to add a stop there as well, and that will put the new stop after your original destination, if that makes sense. So little shortcut for those that don't want to add a stop and then change the order of their destinations. If you want to add a stop at the end of a trip, just do it in the edit trip function rather than the added stop. Big fan, and thank you for the podcast.
Hello, Nathan. This is a fantastic pro tip. Thank you. I will say I've definitely never used this one because I didn't know you could do it. Now I definitely will, though, because there are absolutely times where I want to add another stop when I'm out running errands. So good stuff here. I appreciate you calling in. And if anybody else out there has a good Tesla pro tip of the week that you'd like to share with me and your fellow Tesla owners and enthusiasts, please do call in with it the same way that you call in with a regular Ride the Lightning hotline call. And I will have another community-driven Tesla pro tip of the week for you on next week's podcast. Some friends of the podcast to mention before I go. First up, AbstractOcean.com, who continues to kindly offer the Ride the Lightning audience a 15% discount off of your first order using the coupon code RTLPodcast. All one word on that. Out of curiosity, what do they have for the Juniper, the new Model Y? So I went to AbstractOcean.com just now and clicked on Model Y, and they've got two categories, the original and the refresh. And they've got some good stuff. So $23 on sale is a satin black Tesla emblem for the back. So the TESLA letters in satin black, if you wanted to do that instead of the chrome letters that Tesla gives you. They've got puddle lights. They've got a dual motor emblem. They've got those tempered glass screen protectors that I'm a big fan of with that Gorilla Glass. There are the rim trims to protect the edges of your wheels from those curb rashes. There's, mega bright LED premium puddle lights. That's good stuff. The list goes on here. So take a look. Whichever Tesla you have, just go to abstractocean.com, click at the top nav bar, whichever car you've got, and it'll show you every accessory they have. Throw everything you like in that online shopping cart and use that coupon code RTLPodcast at checkout for 15% off of your first order. Next up, the Snap Plate and the newer, stronger Snap Plate Plus. These are the nice minimalist design front license plate brackets for any of the Teslas, including the Cybertruck, that I do personally recommend if you either want or are legally required to have a front license plate on your car. You can take it off without leaving any unsightly hardware behind. Say you're detailing it, you want to take that front plate off to really get in there on your detail. You can do that. You can put it back on if you're going to be parked at a parking meter. You want to avoid the meter maid with the parking ticket. You're going through a toll road bridge. You want to have it on there. Whatever you want to do, it's a really nice, just visually and aesthetically nice product. And then there's the two variants, the regular basically and the extra strength. So check them out at everyamp.com/RTL. And for a discount, use the coupon code RTL at checkout. If you're in or going to be in the greater San Francisco Bay Area with a car that you care about, whether it's your Tesla or another fun toy in your garage, I do recommend that you treat it to a spa day at Immaculate Reflections. That's who's taken such great professional detailing care of both of my Teslas. And they can do the same for yours as well, whether you want to do paint protection film, ceramic coating, paint correction, or all of the above, some combination of the above, etc. Check out the website, irdetailing.com. If you reach out through the website to inquire about services or to book an appointment, make sure you mention that you're a Ride the Lightning... Oh, Daisy, you okay there, pups? Make sure to mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener, And any work, come on, it's okay. You okay? You need a drink of water there, pups? It's all right. Take a second. It's okay. You're so good. Anyway, when you reach out, mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener, and you'll get the Ride the Lightning listener discount if you end up having any detailing services done there. The Patreon, which I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention again here, patreon.com/Tesla podcast. That is the primary way that you can choose to support the podcast if you'd like. And hopefully at some point in time, you will feel that I have earned your support. The support tiers are several, but it also starts really simple. For just $5 a month, that's the base level tier, you could be supporting me, support the podcast, and in return, you'll get not only early access to each week's podcast, but you'll get an ad-free version of each week's podcast, so you won't have to hear what I'm saying right now. So $5 a month is where it starts. If you step up to the $10 a month, you get the early access, the ad-free, and that entire stash of those weekly lightning round bonus mini episodes as well. I am humbled and grateful if you choose to support, because, again, a lot goes into this podcast every week for the last 507 weeks now, which I take a lot of pride in, but, you know, it's a job, and I like doing it, but if you can support me, I would be super grateful if you choose to do that. Make sure you follow the podcast on whatever your favorite podcast service is. The reason to do that is because then you'll get a push notification whenever there's a new episode, which just makes your life a little easier. So you can just, whatever podcast service you're on, search Ride the Lightning Tesla. You should find me pretty quickly. Click follow and you're good to go. And finally, my social medias and email. The email address, you can email me about Tesla or EV stuff anytime, teslapodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on X and or on Instagram. My username on both is DMC_Ryan. And finally, a big hello and an equally big thank you go out to the top tier Patreon backers. These folks, as one of their many stacking perks by being on my Patreon at the higher tiers, get their name shouted out at the end of each week's show, pardon me. So I'd like to do that now. I'll start with the Roadster in Space tier backers, who get the early access, the ad-free, the lightning rounds, the standing invite to the monthly Patreon Zoom hangout. We had a great conversation last weekend with the crew that showed up. And they, if they elect to take it, they get a one-on-one hangout with me each month as well. So big thanks goes out to the Roadster in Space tier backers, Pete White, Lyle Austin, Steve Radspinner, Fernando Cordero, Lawton from Chicago, Sean Neidig, Neil Weaver, Jackson Wallace, Rolf and Jennifer Evers, Howard Anthony Smith, Victoria Iacovetto, Tesla Hitchhiker 42, Carol Weston, Robert from near Philly, American Home Contractors, Doug Carey, Michael Gallo, and Tony Figueroa. Next up, the Maximum Plaid Group, a number of whom showed up to last week's monthly Patreon Zoom hangout. Thank you and hello to Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth Capello, Nick and Tony, the Galpin family, Ryan from New York City, Darren Nickel, Kaz Barnes, Patrick Wisniewski, Gil Cabrera, Todd Badger, Joe Edgel, Kevin Yank, the Tesla Owners Club of San Joaquin Valley, Will Stedman, Justin Perez, Jeremy Harris, Chris Beach, Tom Mills, Corey O'Donnell, Aaron, John Cody, Joel Sapp, Paul Casarino, Chris Osborne, KB, Adam Lavoie, Jason Chalukas, Travis Krenzel, Bruce Otterstein, Tom Behan, Josh Pennington, John from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Dustin Hart, Derek Finley, Charles Clement, Adam Christie, Damon Klein, Jeff Brown, Jerry Slinger, Clayton Goodfellow, Michael Mizrahi, Kenneth Corbett, Brian Bertoglio, and Kim Bay. And finally, a big thank you and hello goes out to the grandfathered in Plaid level supporters. This tier is officially not a thing on the podcast anymore, but these very kind and generous folks continue to support me at that tier, and so they get all the perks and bonuses that come with that. Thank you to George Cassiopo, Logan Willis, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, Dory and Steve Guberman, the Tesla Owners Club of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jared Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Ish, not Elon Musk in quotes, Peter, and the Bear Boys of Colorado. And that will bring us to the end of Ride the Lightning episode 507. Hope you enjoyed this one. I had fun doing this one. It's quite the eclectic mix of stories to talk about this week. I'm looking forward to next week. As always, it's a sprint for me because the earnings calls are on Wednesday, and then I got to put the show together Friday night. But it's a good problem to have. So I just bear down Wednesday night, Thursday night, get prepped, and then record Friday. But I'm curious to see what we're going to hear, particularly in light of this week's headline story, this Reuters report of the Mini Y, Mini 3 being pushed back from June of this year, at least one quarter, if not two, maybe even three. So we'll see what, if anything, Elon and the executives have to say about that next week. Plus, we'll just see what else is in the shareholder letter. There's always interesting stuff. So stay tuned for that. Happy electric motoring, my friends, and I'll see you next week.
Elon Musk, people don't like Elon Musk. The guy founded PayPal and Tesla, and people are like, yeah, but he's a troll and a bad dad. I'm like, so was mine. He did nothing to fight climate change. Also, have you been in a Tesla? Have you been in a Tesla? My buddy let me drive his Tesla. I laughed out loud at how fast it went. Been clinically depressed my entire life, on dozens of medications, in a Tesla for 13 seconds, cured forever.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.